Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting for the Town of Arlington Board of Mayor and Alderman for Monday, October 7th, 2019. Please note that everyone is here and present with the exception of Mr. Brooks, who could not be here tonight. He's out of town, but we do have a quorum. So if I can have everyone please stand. Alderman or Vice Mayor Harry McKee is going to say the prayer, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mike. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and this opportunity we have to come and serve you and serve the town of Arlington. Be with each one of these new members, each one of the ones that are just been sworn in tonight as existing members. Be with the mayor and all the rest of the board as we need to work together to perform the duties to for the best of this town and to glorify you. Be with the scouts that I see here tonight and that Mickey brought with them, and thank you for them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We do have our State Representative Tom Leatherwood, so if you'll please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Leatherwood. I'm not on, I'm sorry. Thank you, Representative Leatherwood, for being here tonight and swearing everybody in. So, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 3rd, 2019 meeting?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McKee.
Second.
Second by Mr. McKee. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes. Next up, grievances and comments from citizens. This is where we allow anybody to come forward and speak on any particular topic in town, whether it's on the agenda tonight or not. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. We do ask you to state your name and address for the record, and please note that it's not necessarily a Q&A, but if we can answer your question at some point throughout the meeting tonight, we will. If not, staff will take your name and get back with you. So is there anyone here to speak on any particular topic tonight? Just show of hands, raise a hand. All right, Mr. Turner, I knew I'd talk one into it, so come on.
Gerald Turner, 6173 Ewing Boulevard. Since the election is over, I'll just come up with my regular questions. You think the University of Tennessee regrets firing Philip Fulmer? That's all I got.
I can answer that. No.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Does that go on the record?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That's any particular topic in town, I guess. That may be a topic broader than the town. Yes, we don't answer that one. Anybody else here to speak on any topic? All right, on to communications from the mayor. Do we have the Sheriff's Department just walked in? Officer, if you'll come up and please state your name and give us the report, please.
Deputy Mercer with the Sheriff's Department in the Patrol Division. I think the last month, the major thing I've only noticed is motor vehicle thefts. There were 3, and read all those reports. Looked like it was just through unlocked vehicles. So, I mean, we can do a better job of locking the vehicles. I could put those numbers down. And that's all I noticed for the past month.
Okay. Everyone has a copy of the Sheriff's Department report in front of them, of course, and we also keep it on file if anybody would like to see it. But are there any questions for the deputy? Seeing none. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Next up, Fire Department report. Chief Harville.
Good evening. Congratulations again to everybody.
Thank you.
This will be the fire report for the month of September 2019. We had a total of 60 responses. 32 of those were EMS, 28 were fire responses. We gave mutual aid 14 times, received it 3 times. 7 calls south of I-40, 7 calls on I-40. We also responded with Fayette County and Shelby County to a large grass fire on Interstate 40 just at the Fayette County line, and one of Fayette County's tankers struck Shelby County's aerial as it was raised and totaled it. Luckily, nobody was injured. There was a person on the ladder when that happened. In the town of Arlington, our companies were on 2 calls when Shelby County responded inside the town limits. We completed a total of 15 inspections, 2 smoke alarm checks. We installed no smoke alarms. As everyone's probably seen, we received the new Quint Truck 71. The tools are being mounted. We went out and looked at it today. They're going to show it in the Firehouse Expo. We'll have it back this weekend, finish mounting the tools on it. We're going to keep it, even though all 3 shifts have been through both the pump and chassis school and the aerial school. Chief McMillan and I are going to keep it out of service for the next couple of weeks and run through scenarios on all 3 shifts so they can practice laying lines, getting water, raising the aerial, that sort of thing. And then we'll have, and everyone should have received it, the push-in ceremony that we're going to have here at the station on the 30th at 5:30 p.m. Just an old ceremony kind of that some departments use, kind of similar to pushing a horse-drawn fire engine back into the bay. A lot of departments still do that, so we're going to do that with the Quint. So we'll invite everybody to come out if you'd like. I have on your report that the first 3 rounds of the SAFER, I checked it before I came in today. There's actually been 5 rounds of SAFER. In the past, I've seen as many as 7. I don't know when they're going to finally cut the SAFER, but we're not in the 5 rounds thus far. So it's not looking encouraging to be awarded the SAFER grant, but we're going to still keep our fingers crossed and keep you updated if they do go to 7 rounds. And then I know we've been working with Mrs. Fusel. I don't know if it's on the page yet, but we've already had some personnel come in and apply for the new position that we're going to staff come January 1. And it should be out on our website. She's already sent the paperwork in for local newspapers to publish those 12 openings for the new company. So that completes my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. If anyone has any questions, now's
Russell,
your
do
time.
you know what the SAFER grant was we was trying to get?
Okay.
I thought maybe Russell didn't know that. If you want to
It's a
explain it a
grant we
little bit.
applied for. It's a staffing for adequate fire emergency services. We hired an outside third party to help construct the grant. It cost us $2,000 in hopes of getting about $1 million assistance in firefighter salary over the next 4-year period. So we've just been on pins and needles since it was submitted back in, I believe it was March. I don't remember the exact date. But the awards have been coming out since about August.
Yeah. So we did that during the budget process. So that was why when we had the discussion of the second fire company, do we start at July 1st or do we wait until October 1st? But with the SAFER grant, we couldn't hire one person until the SAFER grants are cut off. We can't hire one person. Otherwise, it's not retro. So.
Right. And that'll give us about a 3-week period to go through the hiring, testing, agility, and purchase of equipment, and hopefully put that company in service first of the year.
All right. Any other questions for Chief?
How many of the paramedics are we going to hire?
We'll have
out of
3
the grant?
paramedics maintain advanced life support in the new station and the new piece of equipment. And it'll be 9 firefighter EMTs.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next up, I'll have my comments. And first off, I think we all know, well, I will say, we have a new board here, even though everybody on this board has served on this board at some point. So the learning curve is...
Different chairs.
Yes. The learning curve is not as tough as sometimes as a newly elected official, but there are some things. So just one thing, Mr. Wiseman, just know that we try to push the button and talk into the microphone. Well, I'm just saying when it's your turn to talk or when you want to talk, just because when the ladies do the minutes or the video that we also do, they can't hear. So... and that's something that we've been criticized about for a while, that people can't, either from staff or people trying to watch videos, is that they can't hear. So we try to do our best. But again, elections are behind us. I think we all know that we have a job to do. I think the town's in a great spot, in a good direction. I hope to continue it, whether we all always agree or disagree. I think we all want what's best. So I'm excited about where we're going and what's some things that are coming in front of us. Which may happen tomorrow, may happen in 3 years. You never know. The way that Kroger is a good example. So, but it's fun to be a part of the process. So I appreciate everyone, and I appreciate the people who are not here who actually ran also. I know it was tough. It was tough on them. It was tough on their families. Social media has changed the world we live in. So we've said this before, but hats off to all of them also. I do want to talk to, Miss Howe, do you want to mention your chamber lunch on Wednesday? And I know Mr. Thompson's here. He can follow it up with the barbecue associated with the chamber. So Miss Howe?
So the luncheon is at 11:30 on Wednesday, and our guest speaker is Eric Miller from the Greater Memphis Chamber. He's going to talk about regional economic development, which is important to all of us in Arlington. So if you can come, let me know. So I have enough food, but I would love to have you at the luncheon.
Thank you, Mrs. Howe. Mr. Thompson, you want to briefly mention I know we're going to have it on the agenda here in a minute, but do you want to mention anything about the barbecue?
Next Friday, Saturday, it's the 24th annual, it's not 15th, believe it or not.
Not this Friday, Saturday, but the next Friday.
Friday,
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sorry, yeah, the 18th, 19th. A lot of people in this room can remember the first time we did it 15 years ago, right? Anyways, in typical fashion, everybody knows that we're used to the fact that Friday night is when everybody comes out, the teams will entertain friends and family, we'll have live band and food and stuff. And I just want to mention, lastly, it truly is a team effort, a community effort. The Boy Scouts, our Troop 452 from the Methodist Church, do our trash pickup. Of course, we couldn't do it without the support of the town, Daniel, Parks and Rec, Terry, Public Works, the fire department especially helps us make sure everybody's safe. So just want to thank you, everybody that helps us out. Grateful for everybody's participation. We look forward to seeing you all next weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We appreciate the work that you put into that. Everybody puts into it, because it's a lot of volunteers that make all these things happen. Next up, just so everybody's aware, fall break is that same week. It's next week, the 12th to the 17th. So schools, traffic will be a little lighter. Schools will be out. But along with schools, for those of y'all who can make it the other morning, I know Mr. Harmon was there and Mr. McKee was there. We opened the tennis courts, which is a beautiful facility. We appreciate the tennis committee, staff, Parks, Public Works, but Mr. Lamar has been, like I said, I told him earlier, I said he looks 10 years younger. He's got a glow about him. And if you haven't seen him out on the tennis courts, he bounces around about like a 10-year-old out there. So it's pretty amazing. But it's a great facility. Had nothing but great compliments on it. So I know everybody knows it's open, but you really need to go by and just walk and take a look at it. It's nice. Let's see, just so everybody's aware, we do have committee appointments in November of every year. So next month, we will be appointing vacancies on committees. I will be making some phone calls to people, even though some people don't expire. Some expire, some don't, making sure everybody's still able or willing to serve. We do have some applications on file. We can always take more applications, but it doesn't guarantee that anybody's going to get on a committee, because we have a pretty good stack. The process we started a few years ago has really helped get some people's names out there, so that's good. But we'll also, at that meeting, we'll also be doing the vice mayor and the board. In case you're not aware, Russell, that the board appoints, I think, even in my first 4 years or 5 years, it was always the assumption that the mayor appointed the planning commission member of the board, but the board appoints the planning commission member of the board. So so the board will have the vice mayor to decide on and the alderman serving on the planning commission. Next is, I'm going to have Mrs. Durant. I know this is one of the questions we've had before. It's not on the agenda tonight.
I got one announcement when you
Okay.
get time.
It's not on the agenda tonight, but it's something we've talked about, I know, for years and years, and I know everybody's had some meetings at some point or some conversations, but would you give a quick update what we were talking about today about Kim Tainer?
So for, about 6 years now total, we've been working, trying to get Kim Tainer Industries to spruce up the front of their business. Pretty hot and heavy on them for the last 2 years, mainly because there are some out parcels next door and in front of that industry that are having trouble attracting sites to want to use those out parcels because of the appearance of the business. So Ms. Reeder and her staff have been instrumental in sending letters and meeting with the owners out of New York and getting them to submit some improvement plans, and we reviewed those Friday, sent them to Ms. Reeder over the weekend. She reviewed them again today. They're going to plant a row of street trees that match the rest of the street trees down Airline up near the sidewalk, but out from under the power line. They're going to plant a row of evergreens in front of the chain link fence. Nothing is going to block those containers. They're huge, but it'll soften the view. So they're 6 to 8 feet tall, 30-gallon plants when they go in the ground. They're going to repave the whole parking lot. Public Works closed off one of the curb cuts to keep big trucks from going in there and parking illegally. They're going to rip out part of their parking lot, turn it back into grass, green grass. That'll soften the view as well. And then they're going to repave the balance of the parking lot and do some plantings around the building. Again, nothing's going to make it new and shiny and great, but at least this is more in conformance with what your standards are today. And that should be taking place in November.
Thank you, because I know it's been a long time. We've been talking about that for a while. Remember when Heather was here, we were back talking about, because they had vines growing all the way across the building. So it's nice to see that being cleaned up. One last thing, I don't know, a quick update on notice to proceed on Airline. Do you have any information on that, Mrs. Durant?
We are out for bids right now. We will open bids for construction on Airline Road on October 29th. Hope to have a recommendation before you at the November Board of Mayor and Alderman to award that contract. Finish that widening from the high school all the way down to Hall Creek Bridge.
Thank you very much. My last announcement is Halloween is actually on Halloween. So that's the other big question we get every year. So let's just go ahead and get that on the record. I don't know. It's October 31st, whatever day that is. All right, Mr. McKee.
Yeah, I got a text from Jill Peterson with the Kiwanis Club, just asking me to make an announcement that they're having a pancake dinner benefiting the Arlington High School choir trip to Normandy. Is that right, Ms.? And if you know, when you talk later, if you want to say anything, you can on that. It's it's going to be at the Arlington Elementary Cafeteria Tuesday, October the 22nd, from 5 to 7. $5 donation or more. She didn't say that, but you know. And you can buy them in advance, and if you need a number, you can get it from me, or you can get it at the door.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. Any other announcements from anybody on the board? Okay. Any committee reports to report? Okay. We do have the treasurer's report. We do have a copy of it here. I'll just say the general fund, since Mr. Brooks isn't here, the beginning balance was $433,219.18. We received $1.7 million in revenues. Our expenditures were $798,000. Our ending balance in the general fund is $1,360,808.22. Sewer fund is beginning balance is $893,472. We received $334,000 in revenues. Expenditures were approximately $106,000. So our ending balance is $2,122,015.23. Any questions on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. Any old business, Mrs. Durant?
None.
On to new business. Item A, first reading of ordinance 2019-10 to amend the Town of Arlington zoning map by rezoning 2 lots totaling roughly 2.87 acres of property located on the east side of Airline Road, south of Hayes Road, from E Estate to SC Shopping Center Commercial. Mrs. Reeder, welcome back.
Thank you. All right. This is the first reading of a rezoning request that's being put in front of you tonight. So there is not a public hearing associated with it tonight. As you mentioned, the site in question is just under 3 acres in size. It includes 2 parcels here on Airline Road. So this is the entrance to the high school here. There's Hayes Road, so just to orient you, there's a house that sits there sort of raised up on the hill. The parcels are actually zoned E or estate residential right now. The applicant and the owners are looking to change that to shopping center or SC commercial. As you can see on here, there's a single-family home currently on each of those lots. I have received information from the applicant that those homes would remain there until any construction on site would occur, when they would be demolished and relocated, and we can get that confirmed. Should there be any decision or discussion about conversion, I would mention that they would have to meet any of our design guidelines and all of our site requirements in the future, so either one of those cases. So when we're looking at a zone change request, we look at 3 main things. One is our future land use plan, or what we intend ultimately to be in the area. The other is nearby uses, and lastly, if our infrastructure can accommodate what's being requested of us. So this is just a snippet of our future land use map the way it is now. The site is right here in this circle. Those are the 2 parcels. The sort of bright pink color is community support commercial. The lighter pink is also a neighborhood commercial. So you can see along Airline you have pink. The purple and blue are office and industrial, and actually the industrial, this is Microport and the high school there. So the plan from the current adopted future land use plan is for the majority of Airline Road to ultimately be a commercial type use or similar, or an office. So the The SC zoning would be consistent, not inconsistent, with this community support designation that's there currently. It is a challenging site just because of the linear shape there. And you'll notice on here that we do intend for the commercial to ultimately go slightly deeper than this, which incorporates some other lots. Ideally, you'd have more lots being brought together so you'd have a more cohesive design. But I would hope that should any future applicant come in, we would look for some sort of design that would allow for that expansion and access from airline. This is the current zoning map on your left, the proposal on the right, just to show you what's currently in. You have commercial and office. This is the interchange of Milton Wilson and Airline. Again, this is the high school and Microport. And you can see you have a large section of the estate residential area here. With the proposed change, it would change to a shopping center, which would be consistent with what you see to the south there on Airline Road. Surrounding uses, so the area, while intended for commercial eventually, if you look up and down Airline Road right now, in this area, you have a vacant spot that's ultimately to be office to the north across Hayes. You have the high school, but you also have several single-family homes along Airline on both sides that are still there. So this area hasn't developed as much with the commercial. So while the use that's proposed would be consistent with those that are approved immediately to the north, which is the office at Center at Hayes Crossing development, and with what's intended to be there, the immediately adjacent is residential, and we'd need to take care in any future design in any proposals to make sure that design consideration is given to those homes to make sure there's no impact or negative impacts. Lastly, utilities and public improvements. The municipal services obviously are available. Airline Road has been widened here, so there are no problems with that, with being able to serve the use that's proposed. There are findings that are called for whenever a zone change is considered. These are the 4 here. One is it's consistent with the general plan, which we've shown it is. There's no legal purpose for zoning that's been contravened, and we have not noted one. There not be an adverse effect upon adjoining property owners. Again, no adverse effect is identified from the change, but we would want to pay attention to any future development to make sure there's consideration and protection for those homes that are existing there, and that no property owner would benefit at the detriment of the general public. As the town has identified this area in our long range to be commercial, we didn't identify any detriment from this. The Planning Commission did hear this in August at a public hearing. They had a good amount of discussion over it and did have some concern over the existing uses, but ultimately decided that the long-range plan in the area was for it to develop as commercial, and they recommended approval. We also find it consistent with the future land use plan and their findings for a zoning amendment. So presenting it tonight, the applicant is here to answer any questions you may have, as am I.
Okay, let's, just to remind everybody, this would be the first reading of this, which would take two readings, not necessarily, well, we have a public hearing in between there, or at the second reading.
Yes.
And depending on if approved tonight, we would have to, I know sometimes we assume the second reading is the next month, but if there's anything that comes up tonight, we can discuss that with staff as far as the timeline.
Correct. It gives time for discussion. We would also advertise it and send out notices to any adjacent property owners so that they'd be aware and able to come and speak at the next meeting.
Okay. So you've heard the recommendation by Mrs. Rita. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. McKee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Biggs. All right, again, this is first reading for discussion. We do have the applicant here. I know we discussed this previously somewhat, and it was tabled. So I guess what type of concerns, I mean, from board members at the time were coming up, and what do we need to make sure that we're clear on tonight on the first reading to get through to this, if it passes, to get to the second one. So I'm asking that to the board and to staff. Comments?
I like the applicant or Bill or someone, I'd like to hear from you guys first, if you don't mind.
If y'all will come up and state your name and address for the record.
I didn't know that you were involved in it until just the other day, so.
My name's Bill Powell. I live at 12091 Preserve Woods Lane, which is right around the corner from this property. And I own property in Arlington. I'm the one that converted the Grisham manufacturing building to the Arlington Climate Control Storage. So I've got a pretty good sized investment in Arlington. I love Arlington, that's why I moved here. So the reason I got involved, Tyler Little is a State Farm agent, he's also here. He has been a State Farm agent for 4 years here in Arlington. He wanted a home, permanent home in Arlington, because he's going to be a State Farm agent. He's a young man, and he's going to be here for a while. So he asked me to help him, and we put Mrs. Gaines' property under contract. We took it to Angela. She said that it's kind of an irregular piece. If we could get the Mrs. Fletcher's piece, which Mrs. Fletcher's here, get them together, we would have something we could work with. So we did that. We got Kevin Ledford involved, and we feel like we've got some real good conceptual plans to develop the property with a State Farm agency and some other uses. We do not have any intention to use the buildings that are there. But
Say that again, I didn't hear that, Bill.
We do not have any intention to use the buildings that are there, but I've told Ms. Fletcher that after we close, I'd give her 6 months to remove all her property because she's bought a place in Fayette County. So contractually, it's got to stay there for 6 months.
Is that because it's rental?
No, Ms. Fletcher lives there,
Okay.
yeah.
Based on, I think was your question, because once the purchase of the property, it will be a rental at that time? Is that
That's
what you
right.
No, it won't be a rental. She has the right to live there for 6 months because she's lived there a while, and like all of us,
Sure.
we accumulated a lot of stuff, and it takes a lot of time to move it. So, anyway, we feel like we've got a real good plan. I have no intention to do anything. Well, number one, y'all wouldn't let me do anything that wasn't proper on that piece of property. And I have no intention of doing anything that won't be, Class A property. So, that's our game plan, and we hope you'll go along with us and help us get it done and improve that area of Arlington. Any questions?
The existing house is up there now.
Yes.
Did you say that is not in the plans
No.
after the 6 month? Is that correct, Gerald?
Right.
Okay.
So you're talking about the one, or there's two?
Yeah, there's 2 houses. After the 6 months, neither one of them will be.
Neither one of them will be part of this plan.
No, we've got to level the property. One side's too high, one side's too low. What we're going to do will enhance the surrounding properties, the value of the surrounding properties. I know the owners, it's a family farm, and they were very concerned about losing the family farm. And, having been in the real estate business for 40 some odd years, I know that we will enhance the value of all those properties around these 2 properties. So, go ahead.
Let's see, the next not necessarily the next meeting, but the next one would be a public hearing.
Yeah, the second reading.
Whenever it comes back again. Myself, I do have a few other questions with staff that I'm going to direct them with staff later. And I would suggest the same thing from anyone here because I don't want it to come to a public hearing unless I'm comfortable.
Sure,
And, you got neighbors there too.
absolutely.
And, I'm not telling anyone to have a discussion with neighbors, but I love when my neighbors talk to me. I can't tell people what to do. But, are you going to have plans anytime soon or is
Well, we can't, we've already spent.
I can't ask you to give plans. I know
Right,
that, but I just wondered if you're going to have any.
Well, we've already spent a lot of money on different conceptual plans, but until the property's rezoned,
Yeah, I know. I know
can't
all the
draw a set of plans until the
legal
pro-
things about that. That's
property's
just,
rezoned, and I'm constrained by the zoning ordinance that's in place for SC zoning. So
right.
I'm not going to, I'm not going to do anything that's not going to be compatible with the overall vision of Arlington.
It's right across the street from our high school. You know that.
That's right around the corner from where I live.
I know that.
So-
I want to make sure that everybody, I'm trying to get everything on the minutes I can get on there if you want to know.
Okay.
Okay? So, if there's any questions, I'm going to talk with Angela and I'll talk with staff. I do have a couple of concerns that I'll work through them with. And I know this is the first reading and normally, guys, we do let it go to the public hearing before that. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. Any other questions or concerns? Again, remembering this is the first reading. This is, basically the question is, I know there's questions about the buildings, but the bigger question is that commercial or the question for this board, do we want to see that commercial or not? I know that's in the land use, and that's one of the things that we've talked about, so. Any other questions or concerns at this time? All right. Thank you, Mr. Powell, for being here. Seeing no further questions, all in favor of the motion, this is the first reading, and moving to the second reading, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes. Next up, item B, Resolution 2019-52 to amend the Arlington Community School Board of Education 2019-2020 operating budget. I guess we have Mrs. Durant, and we also have Arlington School, plenty from Arlington Schools with Ms. Mason's staff and board here also. So, Mrs. Durant.
This would be the second set of budget amendments for the Arlington Community Schools 2019-2020 operating budget. Details are in your packet.
You've heard the recommendation by Mrs. Durant. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Harmon, I think second by Mr. Biggs, is I think the first two I heard. Discussion, of course, as we know, there is, when the schools come with a budget or a budget amendment, we can't, we either vote it up or down. I know we can have discussion on it, but we don't, we can't amend or veto or start amending that particular request. So it's either we approve this request or not. Now, Ms. Mason and, I still say Ms. Meeks, I'm sorry. Ms. Robertson.
Write it down.
I know. It's just, you got used to it we saw her so much those first few years when we were getting all this started. It's just, it's kind of, it's entrenched. But they're here also if you have any questions. So, any questions for school staff?
I do have one.
Okay.
Ms. Mason? I was at the school board meeting and most of my questions were answered there, but just in case the board, some of the board wasn't there, it's very unusual to have an amended budget the first month or two, I don't know if it was just an oversight or whatever, but I didn't know if you wanted to speak on the amendment, reason we were having the amendment, just in case we didn't read our books accordingly.
Yes, I'll be happy to. You may remember that in our initial budget, the board passed in May. The board approved a 2% raise across the board for all employees. The board has come back and is wanting to add an additional step raises for those employees that are eligible for a step raise. Out of our, let me see, I got numbers for you. Out of our 468 employees, that would be applicable for 202 employees. And so that is the bulk of this amendment. You'll see the very first thing in the resolution, the $30,000, that is a grant from the Department of Education that Representative Leatherwood helped us get for our cybersecurity program. But besides that, the rest of it goes toward the step raises for those 202 employees.
That was the only question, because it is kind of unusual to have one this early in the school year.
Questions or comments? I know I've got one, and it's not, and I know we have the board members here, and I know I've spoke with some of them personally on this. I said that it kind of puts this board sometimes in a bad spot, because when we talk about recurring and capital expenses, and we talk about, coming to the board, because we've come to staff before many times on capital expenses, and I think that was just one of those things I hope that we're all mindful on going through the budget process is when we have to start kind of pulling something for reserves for recurring expense. The concern, I guess, is how does that impact this current budget and or future budget? So I don't know if you have the answer. I just would kind of wanted to, I know I talked with Ms. Williams about it, and I've talked to another board member on it, so.
This particular amendment is being funded through fund balance, which is a reoccurring cost. It's a little under $300,000. So next year we will, since that's a reoccurring cost, we'll need to take that out of our general fund revenue and not out of fund balance. I will say that we're very proud, the school board and I are very proud of our teachers. You may have seen an article not long ago in Chalkbeat that our teachers are the 4th highest paid in the state and highest in really Middle and West Tennessee. And that helps us attract our employees and keep good employees. And I think that's the vision of the board. And so with that, they felt like it was necessary for those 200 employees. I think it comes out a little over 40% of the employees who were due a step raise to go ahead and add that at this point. But going forward to your question, Mayor, is that we will certainly be putting that when we bring a draft budget to the board. We'll be recommending that those funds, that revenue come out of our general fund and not out of our fund balance going forward. Overall, with this step raise, the board will have invested about $1.4 million in teacher and employee raises this year.
Okay, and just a follow up to that. So step raises, because I don't know if everybody's familiar with it, step raises usually stop at about, like you said, only about half the employees either are getting the step raise, everybody got the 2%. So moving forward, say next year with step raises. So how does that, I don't think everybody maybe understand, I don't want to speak for it, understands what step raises do. You may, because you do.
I know all about step raises.
Yeah, I know you do. So, but I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on what the step raises do.
Yeah, that'll be the decision of the board, as it always is. In looking at, it's difficult, it's very difficult. This will be our 3rd consecutive year that we've been able to fund both step raises and what we call cost of living raises, which is the 2%. Our teachers go up to step 18, other positions, cafeteria positions, secretarial positions, non-certified positions, they don't have as many steps depending upon the job category. It could be as little as 3 or as many as 5. And so that's why I'm speaking from myself, from my perspective, cost of living raises, if we have to make a choice, I would always recommend cost of living because that hits 100% of the employees. If we look at just step raises, you're looking at right about only 40%, and that's going to dwindle each year as more and more people get to the top of their step raises. And so what we'll do when we make a recommendation to the board, we'll look at what our revenues are and what money we have, and then the board will ultimately have to make a decision of how they move forward next year with what funds are available.
Just one follow-up, because
Go ahead. No, that's
what you said about future budgets and everything, does that mean the step raises are in there? I don't know what y'all voted on and all that, but is it in for next year, the year after, or is it just for this 1 year?
Well, this is a reoccurring cost, so these steps, wherever the teachers, if a teacher, let's say, is at step 15, then this will move them to step 16. Next year, they would remain on 16. So then it would be up to the board on, do they want to give another step raise next year, give a cost of living, both, or neither?
Okay, so it was
So
not
we will
voted
never
on
take it away.
to do it every year. It was just for this particular year.
This is for this budget
Okay.
year, yeah.
Okay.
A step raise is basically, it's a reward for years of service, basically what it is. So a teacher that makes, or that's been teaching for 5 years versus a teacher that's been teaching for 10 years, teacher that's been teaching for 10 years is going to get, they're going to make a little bit more money. My wife hasn't gotten a step raise in 9 years. She's been way past 18, whatever it is for Shelby County. But I'll tell you, as a husband of a teacher, you kind of look at those step raises as, or the teacher looks at the teacher looks at the step raises as kind of a promise. It says, if I teach for 6 years, I make this, but when I teach 7 years, I make this. So, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed when I found out, and I thought, I'd asked a lot of questions when we approved the budget. I asked about the national board certification. I was really happy with that, and the cost of living adjustment as well. But I think we have to be careful when we put stuff on paper. To me, I think we need to follow through. If we say that, we're going to give step raises, because it's very disappointing, I'm not going to say demoralizing, but it's disappointing to a teacher when they find out, because this has happened in Shelby County too, where, they basically what you're doing is you're freezing your teachers. Teacher taught 6 years, you're saying, even instead of moving you up to the 7 year, you're staying at, that 6 year. So that was my only comment, is just coming from that side of it. You do look at it like you see it on paper, your spouse or your family thinks, okay, this is what's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. It's disappointing.
Well, I'm not debating one side or the other, but I was thinking about the way we do our employee raises, and we don't really have a cost of living. We haven't done
No, sir, we did away with that quite some time ago. We pay for performance. It's based on steps, but it's pay for performance depending on education, training, certification, taking on responsibility, incentives, that kind of thing. Every year, employee is evaluated if they are not at the high end of their pay scale.
Yeah, so, I'm just glad we're able to give raises on some way or another, but I just know that sometimes it gets tough to do one or the other and or both, so.
But your concern was that this needs to be, cash flowed, not.
Well, I was just, my question was that, this was, well, I was at the meeting where it was discussed. I just happened to be in the neighborhood, and I came in, and they were asking where it was coming from. And that was my question, was it coming from, were they cutting something out of the budget, or were they pulling a recurring expenditure out of capital, out of reserves? And that's where I know we get, even on capital expenses, we're very criticized. That's why, and that just kind of puts, and that's what I expressed to a couple of the board members when I talked to them. It kind of puts us in a weird spot as a board to not be able to tell
guys.
you. So,
Yeah, I got you.
Now, I understood, and I think our board understands that too. I think there was just some confusion of not fully understanding of what was being proposed and what was voted on. To Mr. Bick's point, I'll say that I do, and I think this board knows, but you all may know that when comparing all the school systems in Shelby County, we are the lowest per funded student, but yet we're the highest paid teachers, and that's because our board has invested over the last 3 years for both cost of living and step raises. But I will tell you, we will not be able to sustain that.
Yeah.
And so there's going to have to be some decisions made on what that looks like, and equity before employees. As you said, your wife is at 18, so do you just give step raises, which is significantly cheaper to give this year if we just gave step raises? I think it's about $275,000 versus the 2% for all employees, which was $1.1 million.
Yeah.
That coupled with the increasing insurance costs, which are all reoccurring costs, it really creates a situation where you have to decide you know, what best to use those reoccurring funds for and trying to give everybody something. And so I think that's what the board will continue to have to grapple with over the next few years, because we have put our teachers in a very good situation in comparison to not only surrounding counties, but across the state of Tennessee. We have the second highest teacher pay for incoming teachers in the state, and there's only a difference of like $100 from the first. And these are districts that are getting funded at over $12,000 per student. We're getting funded just a little over $8,000 per student. So balancing that and the other needs as well. And I do have 3 of my board members. Well, I don't think that Lyle's ready to talk about this issue, but Ms. Williams and Mr. Lamar, I don't know if they wanted to say anything or not.
If y'all want to say anything, that's fine, or are there any questions from the board for any of the board members or Ms. Robertson?
And the last thing I will say, that on behalf of the board and the school district, we will never, ever be able to pay our teachers what they're worth. We just, with the amount of time and energy and the responsibilities that our teachers have with these babies every day. And our goal is to compensate them as much as we can, and at the same time make sure that we have money for other areas, resources for our teachers. We have a very low class size student-teacher ratio compared to what's being funded by the state. So in order to maintain those things, we just got to make sure that we're balancing all that.
Former teacher, former teacher, former teacher. Professor, you don't count. So, but we understand. I just wanted to make sure that that the board was understanding about because like I said, I was just kind of happened across that meeting and had some discussions. So I just want to make sure, not that, and I don't want it to come across from here that I'm opposed or anybody's opposed, but we have to ask these questions. So,
No, I'm clear now, thank you. I didn't understand. I helped going to the meeting, but I'm more clear about it now.
okay. Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Mason or
I'll
the
just
board members?
add, Mr. Key, I think the confusion is that people don't look at STEP as raises. There's really 2 different kind of raises that teachers can get, cost of living and STEP. And I think people don't look at them that way. Business side it is, but those that have been in the profession, they think in its assumption, even though in Shelby County, not all years did people get STEP. The majority of the years we did whenever the budget allows. And like I said, from a school district standpoint, it's cheaper for the district to do STEP raises and not do cost of living raises, which why most districts don't do cost of living raises, which is how our salaries have gotten substantially higher than those surrounding. Because when we started 6 years ago, all the municipals started on the same pay scale along with Shelby County, and we have exceeded all of those.
Okay. So just for clarity on Mr. Biggs' point and your point, step raises, whether it's next year, 3 years, 6 years, 10 years from now, the board basically has to decide that at the point each year if they're going to be able to offer step raises based on budget.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And one of the reasons when we looked at and made the recommendation for cost of living raises is because if you look, and one of the things that we'll be taking to the board to consider this year is looking at altering our step schedule for teachers, because if you look at that schedule, it's not equitable in that going from one step to another, it may only be a 0.9% increase, but then another step could be 2.7% increase. And so it's a winners and losers. And so what we're going to look at doing is taking a more equitable between step, that percentage the same. So with the passing of this particular item, employees will be getting a range of between 2% for those that were at the top step, which are our most senior teachers. They'll be getting a 2% because they won't have a step, to others that were at the step where they had the highest 2.7 to a 4.7% raise. So the range of raises for teachers will be between 2% and 4.7%. So you can see how that creates an inequity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item passes. Next up, item C, resolution. Thank you for being here, school board and Ms. Mason.
We won't keep you very much longer.
Yeah, item C, resolution 2019-53 to issue a special event permit for the 24th annual Arlington Barbecue Fall Fest. Mrs. Fussell, excuse me. I forgot this is your first time to present. No pressure.
Speak into the microphone.
Okay, this resolution is for issuance of a special event permit for the 24th Annual Arlington Barbecue Fall Fest. Mr. Thompson already came up and spoke a little bit about it. A copy of the application is in your board packet. We've been in communication with Mr. Thompson through the whole application process, and just to kind of get some concerns and things out of the way as far as staff had questions. And some of the high points, he had already covered a lot of the things, but he's going to be meeting with Chief McMillan to address any questions or concerns that the fire department might have, and recommendations by the fire department. And also, the fire department performs an individual inspection of every barbecue team's station. So they address any concerns that they have with each individual barbecue team. Parks is going to provide all necessary trash receptacles. I think it's going to be like 15 or 20 to make sure that we keep up on all that. And wastewater is providing a mobile food vendor pollution prevention info sheet, a lot of words, to be passed out to all of the food vendors and the barbecue teams to try to address some of the wastewater issues, especially grease disposal, because I know that's been a big one in the past. Mr. Thompson is here for any specific questions that you have, and staff recommends approval.
You've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Mr. Biggs. Discussion or questions or comments?
No rain.
Yeah, hopefully not. All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item passes. Any other new business, Ms. Durant?
No, sir.
Good job, Jessica. All right, do I have a motion to approve the bills for payment?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Mr. Biggs. Any objection to paying those bills? Seeing none, that item passes. Do I have a motion, any other announcements before we adjourn? Thank you all for being here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Key, second by Mr. Harmon. No objection. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. All right. I got to do a radio thing.
You're not quite as pretty as Cheryl. You'll
I added something for the party.
I see you